Welcome to More Than Legal, the show where we go behind the scenes to uncover the fine print of power, purpose, and profit. I'm your host, attorney Danielle Laughlin. After almost 2 decades in the trenches of courtrooms and boardrooms, I have learned that every move leaves a mark and every deal tells a story. What will we uncover today? Let's find out. Hey, real quick, before we dive into the episode, remember, nothing you hear on this podcast is intended to be legal, financial, or tax advice. I invite you to contact any of the guests you hear by looking in the show notes for their contact information, or if you'd like to reach out to me, you can find my contact information at daniellelaughlin.com. All right, now let's get into it. All right, welcome to More Than Legal. I am excited to get started today with Brian May. Brian is not just a friend, he is an expert at digital marketing. He is also an entrepreneur and a member of Entrepreneurs Organization here in Atlanta. He gives a lot of his time back to entrepreneurs and helping them through that organization. And I know many people that learn from him on a regular basis. So I think that you're going to take a lot from this conversation today. Brian, thank you so much for coming in and talking to us.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me.
So I like to start with just giving you the floor to kind of talk about who you are, where you come from, why you do what you do, so that the audience understands why they should listen to what you have to say today.
Okay. Yeah, I'm Brian May. Obviously, I have a digital marketing agency, Daymark Interactive, that I've had for 15 years now. And I primarily focus on healthcare clients, but, we focus on paid search and paid social at this point. But, over the years, it took us a while to get to that point, right? That included doing SEO, reputation management, many other things that clients came up with. And, it took some time to figure out like, hey, let's niche down, just focus on that. But, from that, I got a lot of experience about what works, what doesn't work. I guess, my start in digital marketing came 20 years ago, 2005. My first business, I bought a tutoring franchise with a friend of mine. And this was when Yellow Pages was still active, if you know what that is. And, so we were paying the monthly subscription. And, we would occasionally get a call and then another month we wouldn't. So it was really inconsistent. But this was the early days of Google AdWords. And this was clicks were a lot cheaper. It was more the Wild Wild West. And we were getting leads from it. Right. So I dove in to learning it and then, kind of grew from there to SEO and stuff like that. And it became the best lead source for us at the time, much better than like Yellow Pages and the things that have been traditional media. So over that time, I worked for a couple agencies for a few years and then spun out on my own in 2010, and it's been on my own since. So
amazing. We serve healthcare companies too, and so we definitely know it's a very competitive space, obviously, and of course, there's a lot of regulation around what you can do, who you're talking to, what you can share and not share, type of stuff. So, so I'm looking forward to getting into that conversation. I don't know that many people understand a lot of those types of back end things that happen, especially in the early years of entrepreneurship. And so I think you're going to bring a lot of value to this audience. So for all of our healthcare providers out there who are trying to figure out the marketing game, take your notes. Make sure you have something to write stuff down with. We are going to give you Brian's contact info in the show notes. He'll tell you at the end of the show how you can get in touch with him. So let's get in. Let's get started.
Let's go.
You've been in this game for a really long time, and I'm interested to learn from you why you think so many businesses struggle to attract the right customers, even when they have a digital presence out there.
Yeah, I guess just a digital presence by itself is almost like build it and they will come, right? Just because you have a website means that you're going to get traffic, or just because you wrote a blog post or even ran an ad that means a customer's going to come to you. Like it's more than that, right? You actually have to, put the offers in front of the right people in order to get them to convert, right? I think in the early days, or we'll call it even 10 years ago, even somewhat still now, people confuse attention with or impressions or branding and all this type of stuff with driving patients and those or driving conversions, right? Depending on the industry. And those are different things, right? You can get a whole lot of eyeballs, but those eyeballs, may not be interested or even capable of buying your product. I would compare like a billboard, right? You can put a billboard on the highway and everybody drive by and sees it, but depending on the topic, there's only a few people that are really interested in it, right? So you can say 60,000 people saw it, but the reality is 30 or 50 or however many people really that are interested and at that time ready for your services, that it matters, right? We can go on and on about building brand share and what that means over time. And I think that is important, but typically, especially in small businesses, you don't necessarily have that runway, right? To spend this money now and hope it comes back in 2 years from now, right? Hope that they remember you in the future. That, hey, I saw something from your company a while ago, and now that I'm interested, I go look for you. That's typically not how it happens, especially in the days of search where you just search for everything, right? You search for things that you even know, right? So
Correct.
I think that's changed quite a bit. So if you ask why they struggled, I think not doing enough to promote their websites or their services and products, but also where they do it at, right? Trying to spread yourselves too thin, right? I'm doing a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on Instagram, a little bit on Google Ads, but I'm probably been burned in the past. So now I'm jaded against Google Ads and don't believe they work. And,
I'll raise my hand on that one.
It's common. It's common, right? So, it's an interesting story on that. Like, I don't hear this much anymore, but it was real common for a while there for like a business owner to log into Google Ads, kind of follow the instructions of Google, and wake up the next morning and they spent $4,000, right? And they didn't get any customers out of that. The campaign was set up all wrong, but their recommendations told you your budget should be, whatever. And by the time you figured it out, you're done with it, right? You're like, you can't lose $4,000 too many times, right?
Correct.
So that happens. Like I said, not as much anymore, but I used to hear about it quite a bit. And it's an expertise to it.
I agree. I think it's happened to us. I mean, we've done it, right? And to be fair, we've also paid the wrong agencies too, right? And so I think like you said at the very beginning, you're very clear about who your market is. We serve healthcare. Now, that doesn't mean that if a law firm comes to you, you may not be able to help them, right? But it means that you're very intentional about who it is that you're trying to speak to. And I think that's part of it too. Sometimes business owners want to serve everybody. And so they cast kind of this wide net. And I see that a lot too. And it's like, well, that customer or that client or that patient really wasn't the one that you wanted to get. It was just the one that you got. And of course, we've had that happen as well, where you just aren't aligned and you're speaking to the wrong crowd. Right. So I think it's so important what you're saying. And I also love how you touched on the branding aspect, because that's the sexy part.
Yeah. But
everybody wants to look good and have a nice logo and pretty colors and a great website.
Well, and I was speaking more like that is important. I was speaking more to like when they tell you run all these ads, like you're running display ads and you're running even organic social in a lot of cases, right? And you're not getting any results out of it, so you chalk it up to branding, right? That's how that allows you to sleep at night. You're able to go, well, we know we're putting these resources and this activity toward it. We're pretty sure we're not getting a response from it, but we're building our brand, right? We're saying, hey, whoever saw it is, going to remember us. And then, depending on who you talk to, they're going to give you examples of like, well, Coke does it, McDonald's does it, right? Two totally different, scenarios about building brand versus, most small businesses that just don't have that kind of reach or can afford to spend that kind of money without more of an immediate return.
Yeah, I love that. So on that note, right, you need to target your audience. You need to deliver the message that will convert. I think that's an art in and of itself.
It is.
Right. But what do you think are the mistakes that are made when folks are trying to find that audience? Where do you see them make a misstep?
So a few, right? I think for me it's split, right? If I talk about Google Ads, it's different than if you talked about social media. So on Google Ads, I would say, so if I went back on like part of the previous answer about hiring a bad agency and then spreading too wide, like I can do legal, like I've done legal in the past, right? It's been a few years since I've done it, and I could figure it out, but there's a learning curve of the nuances about legal that I would have to, see what's changed and then see what's actually converting as different, right? The equivalent would be you could do other types of law, but the one you're focused on is the one you got the expertise and you figured all this other stuff out. That doesn't mean if
Right.
somebody came to you with a different type of law, you obviously got the background, you could figure it out, but it's going to take you longer. And then somebody's got to
Yes.
have the grace to work with you, till you do figure it out. And that'd be the same
Yes.
thing, right? If the results in day one, if I'm working in legal, not going to be the same results that I would have after 2 weeks or a month and 2 months down the road, because there's a lot of learnings that come from that. But I can start better in healthcare because I know like, hey, these things don't work, or these do, or these keywords are better than those type of words. Let's go with high intent words versus, research type words. Top of the funnel is not where you want to spend your money because you're going to spend all that up there where there's a lot of volume. And then when it's time for like intent, action-based words, all your money's gone, right? So it's not an even split kind of thing. So depending on the agency you work for and, their level of involvement, they're not really going to get into that kind of granularity. They're going to say, hey, what do? You're going to send you a list of keywords, dump those keywords in a campaign, and, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but that's a lot of what happens, right? Hey, you do
Right.
this law, we buy 15 keywords, drive some traffic, and,
Oh,
and
and
kind of let you
yeah.
there.
And it's shocking too sometimes what will come when you do focus on the top of the funnel, because you'll get calls and you're like, I think we had a call one time. It was like Pampers.
Yeah, it's
We're like,
research.
what went wrong there, and so I love that, and I love how you talk about words of intent. Like a conversion is about an action that's going to be taken. It's not about head in the clouds. Oh,
Yeah. Well,
what
I'll give you an
is
example.
yeah,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
An example of that being like in healthcare, right? So the difference between like knee pain is a top of the funnel research word. Like if I ask you what a person's searching for when they search for knee pain, what do you think that is?
Right, I don't know. Maybe
It could be all over the board. They could be
they're
looking
old.
for, right. They could have woke up today, my knee is hurting. I could be
They're
looking to
me.
start heat versus ice. Is it, MCL, ACL? I could be
Right.
pictures, photos, all these type of things. But if I'm searching for orthopedic surgeon near me, my intent's very different, right? What, my expectations or what I'm gonna see. So if I'm a orthopedic practice, you can spend a lot of money on knee pain, back pain. These are still research, and they could be anywhere from now to never actually going into a practice, right? That pain could go away tomorrow, right? 2 Tylenols might fix it. But if I'm searching for orthopedic surgeon, orthopedic specialist, things like that, those are intent-based words that are going to drive conversions, right? So spend your money down there versus, spreading it equally and think that, you're going to keep driving these people back to the site. The clicks are too expensive in most of these categories to do that.
Oh, yes, especially legal, health, and we do a lot of professional services work, right? So
Yep.
those clicks are very expensive,
Yep.
and you can get burned. I love that. That's such great advice. So please take your notes here. Also, I just want to interject here before we go any further into your expertise. Really pay attention to what Brian is saying here, because what he's saying to you is not you need to go out and hire an agency necessarily to do this, because depending on where you are in your growth journey, that may not actually be a viable option for you. Some of our larger clients, our larger audience listeners, yes, of course, you've got the budget to hire somebody like Brian to come in and really put together a nice campaign for you. But if you don't have that budget yet, that's okay. You want to be discerning. So really listen to what Brian's saying here, because he's providing a lot of really valuable insight. I really appreciate that you're sharing that with us. So
Yep.
what makes the difference between marketing campaigns that convert and those that do not convert?
But I guess some of the things that you've already asked about, right? It's like, how do you target the right audience, right? So if we went back to the last question and tied it into this is, um, if you are targeting, like in Google Ads, if you're targeting too many words on a finite budget, like everybody has a finite budget, but you spread it across too many things, then it's probably not going to work, right? Not enough of your spend is going toward the words that are going to matter for you. So when you look at it, you're like, hey, I do all these types of law, right? And you spread it out like they're created equal, and they're not, right? Like you have better clients than others, right? Focus on, your better clients and what they would be looking for. What services do they buy, right? So if it'd be like if you did notary services, right? Notary services are $50, right? So you
Right.
almost can't afford to run Google Ads because it's not going to be profitable. But if you have somebody, a business that's going to be a multi-month case, year case, that's where you want to focus, right? Don't split your
Right.
spend between those equally. Or, and almost don't waste your money because you're not going to be able to get that to profitably convert, right? You're going to get, even if you get one to convert at $50, you can't, repeatedly do that. So
I love that. That is so critical, because we had this experience where we serve the full life cycle of a business, right? So from startup all the way to dissolution, merger, sale, whatever it may be.
yep.
But our startup business is not really where we make our money. It's not. I mean, we can help with that, and we love to do that. But that's not really where we make our money. And we did make the mistake of trying to spend to get those prospective clients, and we're competing with things like LegalZoom.
Yeah.
I mean, LegalZoom has got a bigger budget than I'm ever going to have to try to get those clients, right? And so,
Right.
and they're not our best clients if we're being really transparent, right? So at the end of the day, it's like, yes, I'd love to help those folks, but I'm going to have to turn volume on that type of a client, like a notary service, right? Or depending on what industry, we've got a lot of construction clients, going in to do a repair is a lot different than going to do a new build, right? Like a custom home, right? So
Right.
it's like, where do you make your money? Because the other stuff will come.
Mm-hmm.
By that brand and reputation is what will bring in those other things if you focus on what really is the best profitable service line that you have.
And or not, right? I mean, not a marketing question as a business. Those are, I would equate it in an agency to what you did in a startup is what happens with an agency. And while a lot of people have frustrations with agencies, is say you start, use a number, you're working with an agency and you're spending $500 or $1,000 a month, right? Well, you're not an awesome client for the agency either, right? Their hope, in the same would be for you as startup, is that this relationship grows, right? We show you results, and then over time, as you grow, we grow. And often that doesn't happen, right? Your frustration at that $1,000 a month because you aren't seeing any results, you're more likely to end the campaign than it's like, hey, I respect the 5 or 10 or 50 leads that we received. You're going to question them, and you're not going to turn from $1,000 client to a $10,000 client, right? That happens, but it's rare. Same thing as you for a startup. You spend a bunch of money in acquisition, but that person buys that service and then they're kind of done, right? Like it's almost like realizing that LegalZoom, if they're looking for LegalZoom, they're not your client, right?
They're not, right?
Even if you get them, you can't produce, you can't give them the output at the same cost that LegalZoom does, so you lose anyway, right?
You lose anyway. Absolutely. Absolutely. And, we do try to counsel clients on this type of stuff as well, because a lot of times what will happen is they come to us when they have a dispute with their customer or their client, right? And it's like, oh, well, they're not paying us, or they're saying that we breached, and, they're coming after us. We got a demand, and they were the worst client we ever had. They were,
Right.
And it's like, oh man, how did we get here? And a lot of the things we're looking at is like what you do and the sales process and the terms, what did you say you were going to do? What did they ask you that they wanted? And did you get to a meeting of the minds? Because if you don't, that's a very costly situation. We have a saying here at Sage. We say, not all money is good money.
No, definitely not. I mean, I would say that. So that would equate in marketing. All spend isn't good spend, right? If you going back to the question about targeting, right? In ads, if we're targeting the wrong words, if we're on I think what see in social media is people talk themselves into their audience being greater than what it is, right? You talk about the outliers of when, somebody purchased your service and that's why they're included in your audience, right? Like, say your target is HVAC companies. But at one point you worked with an electrician. So you're like, we do electricians too. And then you keep widening that audience. So then once again, your spin is spread across more people than, I wouldn't say that you can reach, but you just don't have enough spend to cover that. So then once again, you're going to be frustrated because you're not going to see the results. But if you just stuck with like that HVAC group, spent more just on that group, then the frequency that they see your ads goes up. So you go deeper with this group than wider with a whole bunch of people, and you see better results that way. Right. Because then your messaging is different too, right? Your messaging toward an HVAC company would be different than it is to an electrician. And that goes down the line when you're working with different industries and niches that, it's going to be a little bit different messaging, a little bit different offer. What gets them their pain points and what gets them to respond is going to be different. So the better that you can tailor that to your audience, the better response and better conversion you're going to get.
I love that. And we've been talking a lot about this, like optimizing. I think that a lot of the things that we've seen recently, and I don't know, I mean, you tell me if you agree or disagree with this, but a lot of what I've seen here in the last couple of years has been really focused on this kind of click funnel style, crumb to conversion. They see the ad, they click, they buy. But our clients can have some success with that. We've had some success with that as well. But also, depending on kind of who you're talking to, I don't know that a CEO, of a production company is going to follow the crumbs of a click funnel to whatever, magic offer we have at the end of it. There's a lot of that reputation, I think, that comes into it, right? So how do you feel about how that reputation impacts their marketing and their customer acquisition?
I mean, reputation definitely impacts it, but I guess if I'm thinking through what you just said, it's really kind of two answers, right? So, in some cases, online is not your best method, right? As much as I do digital advertising, if your client is very specific of manufacturing company and it's, just this C-level title, then it is going to be a little more difficult to reach them, especially like paid ads, things like that, email, LinkedIn, stuff like that. You can reach out, but targeting that audience is a lot tougher. And then, like you said, walking them down the funnel, like you simplify what the click funnel or what the funnel looks like. What that's supposed to be is I get you in, you get a lead magnet or tripwire, which is a tip sheet or something like that. You download that, then I put you on an autoresponder email, and then I get you to hopefully book a call, and you're supposed to run remarketing ads that you see, and that works, but you need higher volumes of people, right? If your target audience is say 10,000 people across the country or whatever, at any given time, how many are really interested in your service, right? So when you start to do those type of numbers, it might be better to pick up the phone, might be better to do something else, go to a conference versus trying to target them on ads, and then leads back to some of this frustration, right? If you got bigger audiences, or you don't have to have huge audiences, but make sure that you can reach the target you're trying to go after.
Yeah, right? Well, and to your point, right, any human can experience a knee problem.
Right.
But not any human needs a business lawyer.
No.
Right.
Not every business needs a lawyer at that moment, right? Some
at that moment.
Striking while the iron's hot, right? Like
Right. So it's like, maybe there's not a ton of people today that have that knee injury, but the likelihood that any one person at any one time may need it is higher.
Right.
Sounds like what you're kind of saying. Am I on the right track with that idea?
Yeah, definitely. Right. And you start to mix into like B2B versus B2C too, right? In the B2B, your audience are smaller than they're going to be in B2C, right? So the knee pain example would be from a practice perspective. They're looking out saying, how many people in this area need knee pain right now? And, that's going to be a bigger number than from my perspective, how many practices need paid services to go after knee pain customers, right? So, my audience is smaller, theirs is bigger. So we would treat those differently. But the other part
Yeah.
of that is like, and it's why I think Google Ads and I guess Bing, if you're using it, is the greatest advertising method ever, because it's the first thing ever that allows you to advertise based exactly on what somebody's searching for. Right.
Right.
Every other medium, like on Facebook, we can target people. You can target specific people by custom lists, but I can target audiences, right? I can target, people between 25 and 45 that are interested in, gym shoes or something like that. But on Google search, I'm saying I'm looking for a business attorney in Atlanta, Georgia, right? I'm looking for red high heel shoes. I'm looking
Right.
for urgent care near me, right? So our challenge as advertisers and business owners, how do we put the right ad in front of these people at the right time based on what they're searching for? But I would also say eliminate waste, right? Like you're not, somebody's looking for business lawyer jobs, right? You don't want your ad to show for that, right? Your
Right.
negative list is as important or more important than your keyword list, right?
Oh
Eliminate all the
yeah.
waste, salaries, pictures, case studies, all these words that people search for business lawyer for. Like, I don't want my ads to show for it. I want to narrow it down as tightly as I can, just when they're searching for, action toward that type of service.
Yes, absolutely. And it was so interesting going through that process as well, because we started to see stuff like that. We would see words on the negative list and we'd be like, oh my gosh, no, yeah, we don't want that. That's
You
not
have
what
no
it is.
idea, right?
No idea. So it's very important. I think it's very complicated, right? You
It
said
is.
earlier, like, not to oversimplify. Look, can you do all the things all the time by yourself? I mean, yes, you can try. And as entrepreneurs, we usually probably try too much to do that sort of thing.
Right.
But just like you can go out there and get your contract on ChatGPT and hope that it works for you, you can
Right.
go spend a few $1,000s with Google Ads and hope that it works for you.
Right.
Nobody's saying that you can't. It's a free country. And
Right.
and thankfully we have the technology, right? Like, absolutely be my guest. But
Yeah.
is that going to get you the result that you are looking to get? And I think that sometimes there's almost like a blinder
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, well, the result I want as an entrepreneur is grow my business, make more money, hire more people, do more good in the world.
Yep.
We all want that. But are you willing to do the things to get the result? And I think that you're making it very clear here today that while all of these tools are out there, you can get your Google ad account today, you can go in there, you can do all this stuff. You also have to recognize this is not as easy as it seems. And I can speak personally to this because we've lost a lot of money in this area. We've lost a lot of money by wrong DIY approach, hire agencies that really aren't the best fit for what we're looking to do.
Right.
And even, and no offense to any of those agencies, because I think that they get results for other clients. It's not like if they weren't getting results for clients, they would not still be in business. So you have to also understand, it's just like, I heard along the way one time, McDonald's hears more no's than yeses, because every time somebody passes McDonald's and goes to Chick-fil-A, that's a no, right?
Right.
And I think that being discerning, a lot of times we want the quick fix.
Yep.
Oh, I hear Brian today. Brian knows what he's talking about.
Yep.
I'm going to call Brian. Brian, fix it for me. And Brian is a good business owner, and he has probably been through this a time or two where he knows there's some people he doesn't need to do work for.
Right.
Because like he just said, it's going to take more time. It's not going to be the best product or service that you can provide elsewhere. And so be discerning in who you're hiring and listening to as well when you're out here in this world, because it's a big cash grab too. I think it's easy entry. Anybody can say they're a digital marketer
Today.
Right?
Yeah.
And
There's no barrier to entry, right?
No barrier. And so it's a testament to how well you have done to be in business for as long as you have. And really, I think, too, just the timing of it, of getting in early when this really started to hit the scene and being part of that forefront. So I really appreciate your great perspective here.
Yep.
Tell me, is there anything that you wish people knew that we haven't talked about today? Some burning desire you have that maybe you're hanging out with your other digital marketing buddies and you're like, man, I'm just so tired of this or that. Is there anything like that that you would share today, like a secret tip or something or warning?
Yeah, that's funny. Like, so one of the things is kind of a joke, right? That you still talk about keywords, right? It's been 20 years and people are still, you still have to explain them, right? And people mostly still don't understand, right? The difference, like what you're talking about, you go and look at the negative words. That means that there's a difference between what keywords you target and then the queries your ad shows up for, right? Just because I target the word business lawyer, there's going to be other combinations of words that my ads show up for. You got to look at those and eliminate those. But I would say, that's the biggest thing is that, this it's changed a lot, but a lot of it's still the same, right? You got to be better in what exists today, right? So, for instance, it's definitely in most cases not for you to go out and try to figure out Google ads yourself or Facebook, things like that. But the challenge is if you've had bad experiences or, non-productive experience with agencies, well, how do you ask better questions for the agencies that you hire next, right?
Right.
Because like one of the things you said is like, hey, the agency exists and they must be getting results. Like that's not true at all, right? It's because a lot of agencies work with clients who aren't focused on results, right? So if you
Ah,
yeah, if for instance, a lot of agencies are still able to sell activity, right? I can buy you a lot of impressions, right? So I can
right.
give you a report, especially bigger business sometimes, and say, well, I bought you 25 million impressions, and
What
that got
more do you want?
everybody's happy, right? You put in a report, I got 15,000 clicks, 25 million impressions, and how much business did it lead to? Well, it built a brand, right? Ad recalls up 12%. Like, these are numbers that all go on slides, but as a small business owner, we go like that doesn't mean much for us, right? Doesn't mean anything, right? If we didn't get new business out of 25 million impressions, we might as well got zero, right? In many cases. So
Yeah.
a lot of agencies still sell a lot, especially the bigger ones, right? They're selling activity, right? Not necessarily results. Results are much harder to achieve. So if a lot of agencies come in, that's why they still sell you or give you click reports and impression reports and not get into the nuances like, what conversions or, so a lot of times, like for you, a lot of your conversions may not be online. You may still receive more phone calls than you do online appointments, right? So if
Sure.
you're not
Yeah.
tracking that, then my ad campaign is going to look terrible. But because
Right.
I'm looking at online conversions, I got a pixel set up to track that, but I'm missing all the phone calls. So say you are probably 3-to-1 calls versus form conversions. It looked like I only had 10, but I had 30 phone calls that were never
Right.
accounted for, right? So
Right.
some of us how we track it and being realistic about everybody doesn't want to fill out a form, right? There's still a
Oh,
lot of phone calls
exactly.
happening where I got questions. We
Yeah,
see that in
exactly.
healthcare, it's still heavy phone calls. You got questions, which insurances do you take? When,
Right.
I see your appointment online, but is there a closer appointment I can get? Like all those
Right.
questions that come up. So, just I would say what we joke about is like, as much as things change, as much time has passed, a lot of the questions are still the same as they were in 2010, 2005, right? So,
Right.
you know,
Absolutely.
so it's still
It's a great point you make too, because a lot of people take for granted the forms. But if I'm depending on who you're targeting, right?
Mhm.
There are prospective customers, clients, patients, et cetera, that are sitting at home in front of their computer or sitting at their workspace and can spend that time filling out your form. Yes, of
Yeah,
course. But a lot of people are maybe they're trying to call you on their lunch break because they're at work and they don't want to use their work computer to fill out your form.
right.
Or maybe they're driving down the road on their commute and they're trying to use Bluetooth and they're trying to call you from the map function or whatever.
Right.
And so I love that you really do acknowledge that. And I like that you mentioned tracking as well, because you can track the calls,
Yeah.
track where the calls are coming from and where they're going. And so those are all great questions to ask your marketers. How do they track? Do they understand the difference between B2B and B2C strategies? It's another really good question to ask them. What results will they deliver? They
Right.
might get offended. A lot of times we hear clients, they say, it happens a lot, actually. And this is one of my pet peeves. Let me share one of my pet peeves with you, Brian, and anybody else listening. So folks come to us a lot of times. We try to get them before the problem happens.
Right.
But like most humans, entrepreneurs, leaders of businesses wait until the pain comes before they actually try to get a fix for it.
Right.
So they call with the problem. Here's the problem. Yes, we can fix your problem, but also don't come back to the ER next month with the same issue, because your ER visit is about to be 10x
right
what that preventive care would have cost you, both in time and money.
Right. And pain.
And impact, right? Reputational impact, right? Yep. And so one of the things I see a lot is, well, I don't want to say that. I don't want to put that in my contract.
Right.
I don't want to ask them that. They're not going to buy from me. They're not going to want to do business. I feel like that's similar in marketing, where you want it to work so badly, just like you want to make the sale so badly. So you want the customers to come. It's the I got to get the customer today.
Right.
And so it's like, what's the fastest, cheapest, closest shortcut I can take to get to the customer? Because guess what? All the bad things aren't going to happen to me.
Right.
I'm not going to have all those negative keyword issues.
You're gonna
do you see that too? Like, do you see that like eagerness to convert and sell, and it just like overshadows everything else?
Yeah, you caught it right. It's the quick fix, right? Like, you just because you set up a page and throw some couple dollars at it, that means it's going to work. And that's not true, right? All of these spaces are very competitive, right? So, and I guess there's another piece of, the clients or patients or whatever industry, they don't just do what you want them to do because that's what you want them to do, right? Because you put a form on your website. Think a good example would be like home service. Like, if you have a plumbing issue, you pick up the phone, you want to talk to somebody, you need to get somebody out. You don't want to fill out a form and hope somebody calls me sometime between now and never, right?
Right.
And the reality is you're going to call probably the first 3 or 4, nobody even answers the phone, right?
So
or nobody
true.
calls you back, right? That's an industry that there's a lot of opportunity for improvement. As a frustration for marketers, right? I call it a sin, right? Like, if you do all the effort that it takes to get somebody to call you or fill out a form and then you don't respond to them, like that's all waste, right? Like that.
It's not the marketer's problem either.
No, it's not the marketer. Marketer did his job,
right?
But if you don't answer the call, or you answer the call and it's handled poorly, right? That happens very often. How often you call somewhere and you're like, wow, you had to talk the person through what you wanted, right? They had no phone skills. They weren't very helpful. They weren't trying to move you toward a solution. So all of that stuff happens after marketing. So you're spending marketing, and sometimes you've called bad leads, weren't bad leads. You had bad internal processes and personnel that handle them, the wrong way. But that looks like marketing, but that's not. That's operations, right? That's sales.
What was the Alec Baldwin movie? Coffee is for closers.
Coffee is for closers.
What is it? Glenn Ross or something like that, right?
Always be closing. Yep.
Always be closing. ABC.
Yep.
But the leads are bad.
Right. I would have made $1 million last night with those same leads. Right. But that's it. Like, every time somebody calls a bad lead, it's not. Sometimes they are bad leads. Sometimes they're not. Right. I can give you an example. Like, I've worked with clients recently, right, and their internal staff just was not responding to the emails. Right. The leads came through, and sent them an email. And there were all the excuses. Oh, we didn't get the emails. Oh, we didn't see it. And they weren't, right? And these were a lot of leads, right? We're talking a couple hundred. And, so then you're questioning the campaign, and that's the wrong place, right? Like, the cost per conversion was awesome, right? Especially for the industry and things. But if they don't handle them properly.
What can you do? That's out of your hands.
No, you can't.
So know what to expect. I think that's really the point of what we're saying, folks. If you expect your marketer to close your sale, that's not going to happen for you. You got to understand the distinction between the two prongs of that growth we call them the 5 pillars of sound business, right? So the growth engine is the sales and marketing of the business.
Yep.
And a marketer doesn't sell and a salesman doesn't market. These are not the same ideas. I think that, and nowadays we start to see kind of a conversion, and we're trying to force them all into the same box. But the reality is, like you just said a few minutes ago, we're all still human.
Yeah.
People are people. And if my toilet is overflowing right now,
yeah, I need it now.
I need it now. I need it now. This is great, Brian. Well, thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And I love just your approach. And it's why we wanted to invite you, because we like to talk to people that cut to the chase. Brian's not here to sell anything to you guys. Okay.
No.
Brian is here to tell you what works and what doesn't.
Yep.
Because he's a passionate entrepreneur. He's been through it himself. You heard him. He's a serial entrepreneur. He bought a business that was not a digital marketing business. What was it again? It was a
tutoring business, in-home tutoring franchise.
Yeah, a tutoring franchise. And what he saw, like any good entrepreneur, was a different opportunity. And he rode a wave, and he's learned a lot. And so he's here to share with you. He's a true teacher. I know Brian personally. He cares about entrepreneurship. He wants to see people succeed. Yep. So, Brian, I appreciate you taking this time out of your day to come and talk to our audience and really share some very valuable information. Let's go ahead and tell folks, if they're in the space that you have the expertise in, because we do have a lot of healthcare providers that we help and hopefully are listening. How can people get in touch with you?
Probably best way is email Brian, BRIAN, at Daymark, DAYMARK, interactive.com. Just shoot me an email. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just industry specific, like any general questions, or run something by me. I'm open to all of that. One other thing I throw in is that you talked about reputation. This is an easy win, I think, for especially local businesses, is reputation, like your rating and reviews on Google. Right. That's how you get rated in a 3-pack when people search for local terms, is get more reviews. Right. If you got a 4-star rating and 2 reviews, you're not going to show up there. Right. When your competitor has a 4.7 and 200 reviews. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's a really low cost effort. Reach out to your clients and past clients and get reviews. And that's a way to show up and get free traffic from Google My Business, where, just because you rank high and people trust you because of that rating.
And we're bad at that. We're bad. And a lot of times, like, we're different, I think, in some respects. Like, I know everybody says they're different, but depending on what we do for our clients, they may not necessarily want us to know that they were our clients, you know? So, yeah, but I do agree, because even our competitors that get those reviews, like, they're showing up higher than we are.
They get traffic from that, right?
They get traffic. Is so true. So we actually are internally talking about the same thing. Like, we got to do a review campaign and get over the, fear of the ask, or, whether it's almost like, I think for us, we kind of say no before we even ask them. Like, well, do they want people to know they have a lawyer? Why not? I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not gonna say any specific softwares or anything, but one option is what people do, and they call it review gating. But have them respond to an internal form, and then if it's positive, right, if it's 4 stars and above, then say, hey, would you also like to leave that on Google? Then it goes there. If not, it's just internal feedback, and then you can respond and follow up what their issue is. So that's why often when you see somebody with like how do they have all 5-star reviews, right?
Right.
It's because they've done that. They made the negative ones, or the 3 below, they just stay internally, and you talk to them, respond to them, right? It is a way to improve, whatever the failure is in your business, but there's also a way to make sure that the things that are going to Google are just the higher rated, and the people that have positive experiences with you.
That's so true. It's also, that's a really important point, because I think too, if there is a problem later, right? You experience a chargeback, you experience a demand letter, a refund request, or whatever it may be. If you've done something like that, where you actually did try to resolve something and work with them and all of those things, if you do have to come over to us because you waited for the pain, which I don't recommend, you should come before that. But if you don't, at least at that point, we have a way to help, right? And really
Right.
try to bolster your position to try to prevent that refund or that chargeback. So
Yeah.
I think that's also just good business, right?
Right.
Just really good business sense.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that. So many gold nuggets here. So what we're going to do too, Brian, we'll put your email, we'll put your website and all your socials in our show notes. So please check that out, folks. And I hope you got a lot here today from Brian. Brian, thanks again for everything.
No doubt. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to the show. Remember, stay sharp, stay curious, and stay tuned for our next episode.